Hello everyone! In this video, I'm gonna react to someone else's content. The video I'm gonna react to is a video made by Chris Titus Tech. I really respect his work, and he made this video called Linux Problem. And I'm pretty sure all of my viewers already watched it, but I think it would be interesting to get my personal take on the Linux problem that Chris Titus Tech encountered, and give some feedback, give my perspective toward this video, because I think it's a really good video, but I want to add something. Okay, so let's get into it. So here we are. This is Chris Titus Tech video here. It's called Linux Problem. It has been released 2 days ago, and we're gonna go through it. But before we go through it, I want to show you something like that's gonna kind of like put you in a context. I'm using Linux right now. I'm using Arch, by the way, and I'm using Wayland. Okay, this is my setup here, just for you to see. So I'm running like 3 display at the same time, those one, and I'm also like cloning my main capture card here for you guys to have it recorded on the second PC there. So you don't know, in case you don't know me, I'm a content creator and I'm really specialized into Linux and gaming, and some of the subjects that Chris is gonna talk about in this video are related to that. And I want you to start with a little bit of context. Okay, like let's say it this way, a little bit of context for the viewers that don't know me or what I'm doing or what type of OS I'm running.
I've been using Linux for over 5 years as my main daily driver, and I've had some problems. And frankly, I really just wanted to get like DaVinci Resolve working on my...
Okay, so there is a lot to say right away. I've been running Linux for 5 years and I had a lot of problems. This is a real thing. Okay, if you install Linux, you're gonna have problem. But it's true for all the operating system, in my opinion. It's just because most of the PCs, they are delivered with Windows. We know how to solve problem on Windows. But because most of us don't know how to use Linux as a daily driver, at the beginning, the road is complicated. And I would say, especially like nowadays, because of the evolution of Linux and how fast it goes, it's even more complex. However, there is a way to make things work. For example, you could watch Chris' video, because there is a lot of good content in his video. I have to say, like, it's awesome. Or you could watch mine too, but we'll talk about that after. Okay, let's continue the video.
Linux. I wanted to play every game that I love playing on Linux in a better state than it is in Windows.
Yes, and this is possible. Playing game in a better state than it is on Windows, it's possible. You can play all the game now because of anti-cheat, like kernel anti-cheat, and also some devs that don't want to activate those anti-cheats within Linux. But all the other games, they run better. And when I say better, they run smoother. I made a ton of video about it. I've been preaching that for almost 3 years now. The 1% low, they are better. You're gonna have a smoother experience than on Windows. That I can guarantee.
I've been told this fairy tale, and it's actually come true for me.
Aha!
But
you see?
It was not all
it's true.
Sunshine and rainbows, and I wanted to go over these problems and how I fix them and why I choose and use Linux the way I do, so you have a better understanding of how Linux actually operates from a desktop perspective in a power user setting.
So this is really important. Okay, I think we need more of those videos. I'm trying to do my part here by pushing a lot of video where I explain the issue you're gonna encounter and also like what are the solutions. Because there is a lot of content for Windows, but there is not that much for Linux. The issue related to that is that there is, I think, like 500 distro to go through if I want to cover all the problem on every distro. So you will think on one hand, like it's good because it's an infinite source of content for me, but it's also not good because if I cover one distro and one problem, I'm literally forgetting 499 other distro. So that's the challenge I'm dealing with right now, and that's why like I've been focusing on certain distro and not others. But this is where we are at right now, and I think like this type of video are really good because it kind of give you the experience and the perspective of someone, and me reacting to this video is going to give you another perspective, okay, from someone else. And I think it's really cool because there is a lot I believe you can learn from that.
Because a lot of times the lie we're told is just Linux just works right out of the box. You don't have to do anything. You just install it, go, and everything's great.
So, okay, Chris is saying it's a lie, but it's not a lie. Okay, it's okay. Let's how can I say that? It's partially true in certain so. Let me rephrase that. It's true, but just in certain case scenario. You see, the type of issue you would have in Windows, you won't have them on Linux. And depending on your use case, I'm going to give you an example. I made a video where I took the really old computer of one of my buddies and I transform it to an actual desktop on Linux. I installed Linux Mint, okay? And I say transformed it because it transformed this computer, which was barely running Windows 10, to like a rocket on Linux Mint. So for me, it was a transformation. But the friend I've done this transformation to is now using Linux Mint, and he has no problem with it. He has nothing to do. Everything works, right? Everything works. But for his use case, like if you are browsing on internet, if you are having, you know, a little email client like Thunderbird, and you're watching video and you're making Excel file and little like, you know, office work, like Linux, you have nothing to do. If you want to go further, you want to play video game, it starts to be a little bit more complicated. You want to create content, yeah, that's another level. You want to get into like you want to get more like as an usage as a power user. I would say the barrier to entry is way higher on Linux than on Windows.
And really, it's not that. It doesn't ever work that way. You got to kind of tinker a little bit, especially if you're a power user.
Okay, here we go.
You know, just
I
to
agree
show
with that.
this, my Resolve now is working better than my Windows counterpart. But it didn't start out that way. When I look through these and I'm scrubbing my timelines and I'm making videos for YouTube and grabbing like all my waveforms, there's a lot of little nuances that I had to overcome to make this a possibility, because this is really what I wanted for the longest time in Linux, and I have achieved it, but it didn't come easy.
Okay, so he mentioned a point, in my opinion, which is really important there. You see, because what he's saying concretely is that if you are using any type of software that you're going to translate toward Linux, you're going to have to make some effort. And he's mentioning DaVinci Resolve. So I think he's talking about it again in the video, but I had to do the same because I'm using DaVinci Resolve Studio. I'm going to show you here. Okay, this is DaVinci Resolve Studio here. And it is working pretty nice on my PC. And I've been using that for a long time now, like for more than almost 3 years. But you have to change your workflow. You have to change the way everything goes compared to Windows. You can just not, you know, take the installation, put it there, and it's gonna work. It requires more work and some change. The good news is that working on Linux right now with my workflow is faster than it could ever be on Linux. Ever. So you see, like I'm switching between desktop like that, like nothing. I want to start an application. I just press the right like shortcut, and I have it. It's on, right? I can do like it's really really smooth. And when you arrive at this level of like power user, it's gonna change like your I would say like work on a daily basis because everything's gonna be way way better. But as I mentioned, little barrier to entry. So let's go on the video.
So let's talk about how I've broken Linux over the years, why my current configuration looks like this. It's using DWM. I'm using Xorg. I'm using an old, you know, not even pipe wire for my audio. It's all just ALSA with a little bit of pulse for some of my front end. And that's it. I don't use any desktop environment. It's just as bare bones as you can get in Linux. And honestly, it's almost like a server with a little bit of graphics. But I can play all my games, I can edit all my videos, and it's a fantastic experience. And I like it way better than Mac and Windows.
Okay, so he made a good point there. As you can see, so if you are new to Linux, he's using a Windows manager called DWM. It's a fairly, I would say, complex application to get into, and yeah, I don't want to go too deep into that. But the idea is that you can do whatever you want on Linux. You just need to spend time and learn about how to get things done. And I know for some of us, it could be like directly like a no-go, and I get it. But if you want to avoid all this work, there is alternative, and I think it's good that he's showing his workflow. Me personally, like, I'm not using that, and I'm going to explain why after, but this is good that someone is actually showing you this, like what could be your end game, because this is his end game on his operating system.
So looking at these problems, first one I had was on the desktop environment. Usually people use KDE, which looks like this.
Yeah, that's what I'm using.
Now,
I don't use GNOME.
Tried these out and had a lot of success in the early times, but after a couple months or even a year, really, they would break. And how I would break KDE is usually just doing a big update. Going from KDE 5 to 6 was just awful. I don't know how anything better to say than that. It would flicker. I would run into capture problems from my screen. OBS would glitch out. There'd be a lot of different issues I'd have with KDE. Where in GNOME's instance, whenever I updated GNOME, well, it would break the extensions that I would use with GNOME. So it just wasn't a great experience. Now, there's other desktop environments I could use and some settings. But in the end, a lot of times, I just like setting everything up in terminal.
So here it's personal preference and personal experience. Do you need to set it in terminal? No, you don't. Does KDE and GNOME always break? No, they don't. Okay, here we are in a setup where I guess he was using Arch Linux before, and the philosophy of Arch Linux is always to push the update no matter what. And this is what it is. Push update. If there is a new software, a new package, the distro itself is gonna make sure that you have access to those packages. And there is always benefit and I would say like consequence related to upgrading your package this way. Because when you transition from KDE 5 to KDE 6, the first iteration of KDE can be a mess, okay? Apparently it was a mess for him. I didn't have any issue on my hand. I was on Arch 2, but we don't have the same usage. But I understand his point of view, his perspective, and it makes sense. So if you want to avoid that, just don't run Arch. Just take a distro, which is going to be more like slow when you come to push any type of upgrade. So let's say you're going to go with, for example, like a Fedora-based type of distro, or you're going to go with even slower, like a Debian, okay? Like that, you're going to be in a situation where nothing is going to break, but you won't have the latest feature. You know, this is the type of trade-off you have to go for. You say, okay, I want the latest KDE. Yeah, you're going to get it day 2 of release. But because you get it day 2 on release, you're going to have a lot of positive and you're going to get all the bug. Now we are like, what, like 2 months in and it's flawless. But you can have both. This is how it works.
And I know that's like, oh my God, what the hell, Titus? Like when I set my resolution, I have some weird resolutions set here. I'm like doing a mirrored output with different refresh rates. I'm utilizing my DisplayPort and my HDMI port, but not a 2 monitor situation. I'm actually just mirroring them and grabbing them in from another PC. I'm usually just running a script on a startup to set whatever it is. Right now I'm using a clone setup. So if we
So this is impressive, but I can tell like Chris is really into terminal things. I kind of love this approach. It's just, you need to get into it and you don't have to be worried about it. Like if this is your first experience with Linux and you're like, wow, like I don't want to do that, right? I don't want to have to set up something complicated, right? So you could literally have a really complex system, I'm going to show you here, like this one. And you could have, like I have 3 different screens right now as I'm speaking. And to clone this one, I just go on my 4th and I selection replica and I choose the replica here. It's simple as that. Could I do that through the terminal? Yeah, no problem. In his position, he has to do it because he choose DWM as a Windows manager and he has to do it, right? There is no GUI for him, right? It's all by terminal. And it's a good thing sometimes because when you set it up once and everything is solid, it's gonna work. Otherwise, like with the GUI I just show you there, I could create a script to have the same result, but it's just easier to go there, right-click on my desktop and choose whatever I want. So it's going a little bit extreme here.
It's just an XRandar script.
It sounds like a little bit crazy, but it's not that crazy.
It auto logs in and it runs this script every time I start my PC. It automatically sets my HDMI. It automatically sets my display port. Very old school, but again, it never changes. Yeah. It always works.
That's good.
So that's why I use Xorg. That's why I don't use a desktop environment. My desktop environment, if you look at DWM.
So you say that's why I use Xorg. DWM, I don't think run on Wayland. Okay, that's the first point. It's really important. DWM doesn't run on Wayland, I believe. Please correct me in chat if I'm saying something wrong, because I'm really not used to this one. But I do believe it does not run on Wayland as we speak. So it's like Wayland is not an option. If you want to run something like that on Wayland, I think it's going to have to go with Sway. Yeah, I think that's the name, Sway, or something like Hyperland.
Is, you know, once you configure it once, you have these config files and it's a compiled C program. But once it makes this file right here, this
it's good
DWM,
to go.
That's 100 kilobytes. That's my whole system. That's everything.
That's cool.
What I use to display everything you see on the screen. Flipping between all this, well, it's all done with hotkeys.
So you could do the same, right? I just show you. I'm just using hotkeys right now. I can do whatever I want. It's pretty straight to the point, but you need to understand that you're gonna have to configure that, and some GE are actually more accessible than that for someone who is not a developer or not willing to spend this type of time inside the PC,
all of
right?
It is just 100 kilobyte binary file.
But it's cool.
Never changes until I change it and recompile it. That's kind of old school, but it works incredibly well. So that's why I have these two things. As far as audio issues, I looking back through, like we already went over desktop environments, why it is. There's no reliance on any tool. Everything is done in terminal and coded to work one way, the way I want. And that's how I have it set up. Now for the display rendering, again, when it comes to, using the new Wayland standard, Resolve hates Wayland. A lot of times I haven't had very much good...
Dude, so this is really funny. So here he's saying it's all, but everything already works on it, which is true. I've been using X11 for like 3 years. I just switched to Wayland 1 month ago with the latest release of the NVIDIA driver. Okay, like I had to do it because Wayland is just above X11. X11 is dying, unfortunately. Like this is what you call like Xorg here. But like what is funny is like I'm a boomer and I don't care about HDR or VRR and all the new hotness. Just give me 60 Hz at 1080p and I'm good. High resolution monitor at 4K, not for me. I respect that. Okay, I do respect that. And it's something like sometimes when you have an argument with someone, it's like, hey, like this is new, and the feedback would be like, I don't need it, and I respect it. However, now we are in a position where Wayland is here. It's going to be the future, and even if I was sharing this point of view because nothing was working before, we are at a stage right now where Wayland is actually way above X11. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but it works.
Good things to go with that. And it works really only with AMD cards 100% of the time. A lot of NVIDIA users report problems with
So this was true before.
And you might be thinking, wait, Titus,
the driver, but now it's not the case anymore.
Shipping Wayland by default? Yes. And you're going to have problems. And that's where most of your problems are going to come from.
So this, I don't agree, okay? Like, with all the respect I have with Chris, we're going to have problems, that's for sure, okay? But not for so long. If your distro right now is not pushing the latest NVIDIA driver. I'm talking about NVIDIA because on Wayland for AMGs, there is no issue, right? With NVIDIA, if you use a distro which does not have the latest driver and which has a desktop environment or Windows Manager which does not support explicit sync, Wayland explicit sync, to be clear, you're going to be in trouble. Like, that's a fact. He's right on that. But the thing is, like, now the two main one, GNOME and KDE, they support it. Okay, it's not official. You need to do some trick. I made a video about that, so we are a little bit in advance. But for KDE, it's going to be around like mid-June, so in like 2 weeks, we're going to be good. It's done. So you can use X11 or you can use Wayland, no problem. You don't trust me? Again, I show you. This is fast fetch. And here you can see I'm running Wayland with a 4090. Okay. And again, this is working, no problem. Everything is great. I've been editing video for like 1 month now on this. And I have multiple refresh rate. Like, this is 270 Hz and 60 Hz. And look how smooth it is. Like, it's just really, really good.
So I don't use it. I still use Xwork. I think that will get fixed one day, but that day is not today.
He's right.
And then for audio.
So he's right on that. It's going to be fixed one day, but this day is not today. It's in 2 weeks. At least for the Arch user, everything is going to be like done there. I'm pretty sure Fedora is going to follow right away. And all the big release of, you know, like the stable release of the other distros, they're going to have to go into it because, again, it's a game changer. I've been preaching it for like 1 month now. This is just awesome, guys. Awesome.
So, really, I only use ALSA, and that's mainly because of Resolve. So Resolve, whoever's doing Resolve at DaVinci, they use some very old stuff. And I think eventually they're going to update their stuff with Pipewire because Pipewire is a better standard, I think. But for now, I just kind of hard code everything to where I blacklist any device I'm not using that has an audio output. So when I pull up, let's say Pavu control, you can see under my configuration, there's only one device. Now, if you don't want to do...
So there is a lot of information here. If you are a content creator and you want to use DaVinci Resolve, you don't need to go that route. So Chris, I respect you, buddy, but this, and that's why one of the reasons I also wanted to react on this one, you don't need to stay on Pulse Audio to use ALSA. There is a really good packages. I'm going to show you that. There is like packages right now that actually do all the work for you within Pipewire. So I think this is how you get there. Here we go. You have those packages, Pipewire ALSA, Pipewire Audio, and Pipewire Pulse, was going to make the transition really smooth between Pulse Audio and whatever you were using. I think there is another one called Pipewire Jack 2 if you are using Jack or Jack 2 to Pipewire. And it's working really, really well. So, Chris, if you watch this video, like, don't take it bad, but just install those packages and enjoy the sound on DaVinci Resolve. And NVIDIA Reflex set to enable. Not enable plus boost, not disable, enable. Now I'm gonna let you. Okay, it works. On a competitive game, like it's me. Like this is my before latest video. It's there. It works. Okay, I've been using it, and I'm running Pipewire. There is no Pulse Audio on my machine, and yeah. So again, nothing wrong here, but hopefully you're gonna watch this video and you're gonna notice that yeah, you can do it, no problem. It's working really fine.
This whole configuration from terminal and just have that one device. What I would do is just launch Pavu control and then just change this to off.
Yes.
And then that'll help isolate that down. So when you pull up like Zoom or something like that,
you have only one device, everything works.
One output. Funny enough, when it comes to Windows, I do the same thing. I go into like mmsys.cpl and disable every single audio device I'm not using. Specifically, HDMI devices I hate, and I never use them. Or if I have a USB DAC like this system, I don't want my onboard audio ever showing up or getting used. So I make sure to disable that. Whether it's Windows or Mac or Linux, it's all the same for me because
So
I disable those devices.
to add on that, I believe that Linux right now, in terms of like multimedia, is the best. It's literally the best. Because when you get into Pipewire and you understand how everything is connected, this is just awesome. Like I'm gonna be straight with you. Like this is the best way to create content when it comes to sound. And the fact that Pipewire, because Pipewire is more than sound, it's also a video bridge. It's like it's everything related to multimedia. And Linux is the only one to have that right now. Okay, and this is a big technical advantage. I think people and users don't realize how good it is. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
So I blacklist them this method, and then I just usually delete whatever system or configuration is stock for Pulse Audio and then restart it. And that usually fixes all my issues. Now with Resolve itself, I was also having more audio issues. Getting rid of Pipewire, going back to just also was great. It fixed some of them. But the next thing I ran into is AAC by default is not supported in Linux or Resolve. So that meant a lot of my default recordings from OBS were done with an MP4 H.264 encode with AAC. A lot of people run that configuration.
So okay, he said that AAC was not supported in Linux. It is supported in Linux. It's not supported in Resolve. Okay, so it's a codec pricing issue because Microsoft come with a license and AAC delivered, so DaVinci doesn't have to pay for it. But when it comes to Linux, they don't have to pay for it. So you're gonna have to, or they don't want to pay for it, whatever. I don't know the financial like feedback, but they don't provide the codec, which is fair. So what you're gonna have to do is just when you create a video through OBS, find a codec which is supported by DaVinci Resolve, like that you don't have to re-encode everything. And this is what he's going to explain here, I'm sure. It's just avoid AAC and he choose Opus. So Opus works. I'm not using Opus. I was using FLAC. FLAC is really good. It's really high-end, but it takes a lot of space. And right now I'm using the PCM Wave, like the base one. Okay, it's on my Nova machine over there, which is also running on Linux. I like it very much because it does not compress the sound. Okay, it's just like solid sound, so I can scream, and it will like obviously it has nothing to do with that, but it won't be compressed. You're gonna be able to have a really, really clear sound, even if it gets compressed on YouTube after. I do believe like the quality at the beginning is better. That's my 2 cents.
Just know you're not going to be able to pull in your audio tracks that way. So I switched that encoder from AAC to Opus.
Oh, exactly.
And Opus was actually better quality. You could also do like a PCM 16-bit. It's a little bit bigger size, which I wanted to do more compressing. And since it ggets really compressed here on YouTube, I thought Opus sounds better than AAC anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
So to me, it was a win-win. So I switched from AAC to Opus on my records. And frankly, you don't have to. You could just feed this in like Handbrake and then re-encode it into Opus from AAC if you wanted to go that route. But you can keep your existing workflow. I just changed my whole workflow to...
But this is the thing, right? Like most of the time when you create content, you're going to create content through OBS, right? When it comes to video and sound or any other like software. So why would you not change the output to facilitate your life? Like, at this point, if you're creating content, you have a big hard drive to stock all of this, and adding another step in your workflow make your workflow just harder, right? I know a lot of people are using Handbrake, and I'm like, you don't need Handbrake. Just record in a format which is supported by DaVinci Resolve. So me personally, I would say the best one. I'm using the studio version. I don't really remember like what are the limitations on the non-studio version, but I'm using X265, okay, HEVC. That's what I encode for, and the sound PCM 16, like the Wave one. And also, like, it's really good because those ones, they don't need to be transcoded again with DaVinci, so the flow is really fast. It just works really well. The other one I'm experimenting right now is AV1. AV1, because I can use it on my Intel Arc in my second PC there. AV1 is just great because it doesn't take any space. And I've been doing some tests on the last like 3 videos, and the quality is also awesome. So something to think about. My experience, everyone, the issue with everyone is like, if you want to go really high rate with 4K, like right now I'm recording 4K 60, everyone is not great because it's not great for this type of file, like really high quality. You want everyone for recording your stream, for example, high pace, low bitrate. If you want really high definition, high bitrate, like not low bitrate, like high bitrate, HEVC for me is the best.
Record in Opus, so I never have to worry about it. But good to note for anybody coming over, if you're trying to encode stuff and you're having problems, changing this to Opus is probably what you want to do. And then not using Pipewire if you're using Resolve.
So this I just show you, and like it's not the case.
The biggest thing I really didn't.
You can find an alternative,
and that's simply I had to kick AMD to the curb. I bought
dude. Okay, so this is really funny. You can tell on his face there, he kind of feel ashamed. Okay, well let me tell you, I'm not ashamed at all personally. I'm not ashamed at all. So what he's saying right now, I'm gonna let you talk. I'm gonna let him go through it. He's gonna explain, and then I'm gonna add a new layer on that.
This card, the 7800 XT, and it was nothing but problems for me. I just could never get 100% utilization, whether it was Debian, Arch, it didn't matter, Fedora, Bazzite. I've used a lot of different distributions on this, and I could just never really use this card because the open source drivers just never really caught up to it. And AMD, I don't think was really that helpful.
Oh no.
Where I've always recommended AMD GPUs. I hate to tell you all this, but I'm now an NVIDIA shill.
Oh,
from Team Red to Team Green.
Oh no.
And I am now using an NVIDIA 4070 Super with NVIDIA DKMS drivers.
What?
Honestly, if I wasn't using a custom...
So, okay. So now it's getting technical, but listen to me, guys. I'm not ashamed. I've been using NVIDIA, okay? And I have nothing against AMD user, okay? I have nothing against AMD GPU, and I have nothing against AMD as a corporation, because I do believe they are bringing a lot. Like, when I say a lot, it's like a lot in the open source world, right? Like they literally, AMD and Valve, to me, they literally pave the way for a lot of things. However, when it comes to content creation, like you can't beat NVIDIA. You just can't beat it right now, unfortunately. When it comes to like next usage of your card, because me, this is the way I work. I will buy a graphic card, I will use it in my main computer, and then when the computer is getting really old and I want to upgrade, I'm not getting rid of my graphic card, and especially the NVIDIA one. Because with the NVIDIA one now, I can put it in my server rack down there. And guess what? Now I have AI-powered graphic card running in my own home. And this is just awesome. So could you do that with AMD? Of course. But NVIDIA kind of facilitates it. I've been discussing with a lot of like people around, the fact that NVIDIA is always a source of problem. And after all my testing, and I've been like doing a lot of like distro testing for gaming and with my NVIDIA card, what I noticed, it was like the first issue was related and done at the maintainer level, right? It's like some distro, and I'm not judging them, I'm not saying name here, but some distros, they are not facilitating NVIDIA. They don't. And it's okay, right? Nobody's forcing them. But this is the truth. There is some distro where you're going to have an NVIDIA experience awesome out of the box. You have nothing to do. Everything's going to be there. And I think it's really important to say that because I don't hear it enough. You can have a great experience with NVIDIA. Now, I don't want to talk about the ethic. I don't want to talk about the proprietary stuff. I don't want to get there, right? Like this is not the subject. The subject is like, as an end user, where are we at? And I'm telling you right now, with Wayland and with everything which is happening from my experience for the last like 3 years, NVIDIA went from like meh to great. Like my experience right now on Wayland is just awesome. Like I have no issue. it's working like really good. And I believe like if they continue this pace, we're gonna arrive at a level where the feature on Linux are gonna be equal to the one on Windows. Believe it or not, but I started with a 3090 and I could barely play the game. Like I could play the game, but it was not super smooth. Right now, we have G-Sync, we have NVIDIA Reflex, we have DLSS, we have DLSS like 3.5 re-reconstruction. The only one we need right now is DLSS frame gen and multi-screen G-Sync. That's all. Like otherwise, everything works. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But the way I see the evolution, I'm telling you, we are getting there fast and faster than you think. And I'm not being paid by NVIDIA, right? I just want to make sure that if you're an NVIDIA user and you're on Windows, I'm like, oh, I want to move to Linux. And if you go online, everybody is going to say, oh, NVIDIA sucks on Linux. Like this is trash. It's not, okay? And if you have someone like Chris who say it's going to have some impact. Certainly way more impact than I do because you have like 600,000 subscribers and we are barely going to 10,000 us here. But he's saying it. I've been saying it for 3 years now. I'm telling you, we are getting there. Don't be ashamed to run NVIDIA on Linux. It's a great experience.
Kernel, just installing the NVIDIA driver would have been just fine. You wouldn't have to even use the headers. But instead, I do use a custom kernel. And I do NVIDIA DKMS with Linux headers, rebooted, slap that new card in.
Yes.
And on startup, it just worked.
It just worked.
Issues went away. When I'm gaming now, I get 100% utilization. It's fantastic.
Yes, Papa.
So this is my setup in 2024.
This is pretty awesome.
Heard how I've overcome those problems and just kind of wanted to share with everybody. I know this is not everybody's cup of tea, but I at least wanted to tackle this from a power user perspective so you can understand how I change things so I can be in Linux more and use them. And as a power user, that's fine. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of comments going, hey, I went to my grandpa's computer and I installed Linux Mint. He loves it because he only checks the browser. And
so this is what we were saying earlier. I think this video is great. That's why I wanted to react towards it, because it kind of shows you the path you're going to have to go through, right? When you come to Linux. I don't think we need to watch more of this. But it kind of shows you the path of where you start, what you have to go through, and how you need to be, I would say, like really documented and on top of your game to really make decision. And it's not as easy as Windows, right? Like if you buy hardware, you're gonna have to think exactly like he mentioned there, like, is it working on Linux? And we are in a position right now, I think it's a transition period where we are switching from a state which was like, you know, kind of like not the best in terms of like desktop to a better state. Is it the year of Linux? I don't know, right? But what I can tell you is that if you take this path, it might be a little bit complicated, but you have videos like that from Chris or my videos and a lot of other users out there which are trying to give you a different perspective on moving from any type of operating system to Linux and what type of like transition and path you're gonna have to go through. And really, like this is the point of my whole channel here, is like show you what it is, and then you make your own decision, right? It's like you can try or not try, but I think it's really important to have you know, the perspective of user who already walk this path, right? So guys, that's it for the video. I think I'm going to conclude on that. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel. If you want to support me in this adventure, please, I have a Patreon. I have also a YouTube membership. So guys, please do. This was a React video. Again, like, I hope Chris is not going to take it bad. I would love to have exchange with Chris too. It would be really fun. Maybe one day we're gonna do some type of podcast or whatever. Chris, if you're watching this video, I'm open to it. But yeah, that's it. That's all. See you in the next one. And as we say over there, Bisous, bisous, papa.